So I believe that women in this country, in our culture, have been sold what I like to describe as a big bag of bullshit. Yes, I'm that TED speaker. We've been told that we can have it all, we can't have it all. We can be a working mom and feel great about that. Sometimes we are told you should stay home with your children. If you do that, you should go to work. We should be Barbara Billingsley, for crying out loud. And while we're doing that, we should be sexy. We should be Mother Teresa. It's okay to laugh. We should be smart and tough. We should also be able to grow our own vegetables, raise chickens, and throw the perfect dinner party. If you're someone like Marissa Mayer, who is actually one of the youngest ever selected CEOs of a Fortune 500 company, you have a baby and you go on the cover of a magazine looking like this, well, everybody's pissed, and they think you should look like this. And then there's Angelina Jolie, who's traveling the world, adopting children from every continent, looks like that, and gets to sleep with Brad Pitt. That all makes me feel a little bit like this. I don't know about you. So for me, the question has always been, how do you find your own way? Instead of listening to people telling you what you should do, who you should be, what kind of woman you should be. So I grew up in a place, this is where my journey started. I grew up in a town called Bossier City, Louisiana. No one ever heard of it until we got casinos. It was a fairly, except someone in the back, it was a fairly traditional upbringing. My parents were sort of unconventional people, but it was a small town in the South. I'm sure you can imagine what that was like. I also went to school at the University of Alabama. I am not in this photo, but that is the sorority house where I lived. I actually probably struck that same pose at some point during my college career. I always knew, though, that something wasn't quite right. And it wasn't until really recently that I was having a conversation with someone, and they asked me, well, you grew up in the South. What was that like? And I said something automatically, something I hadn't ever really thought consciously. I said, well, I wasn't very good at conforming. So what does that mean? It means that I grew up in a town where the Baptist church was the predominant entity that dictated culture. I went to school where there were a lot of expectations of, you know, really weird rules like don't walk and smoke. I don't know. You've got to sit down. We wore dresses and our dates wore suit and tie to the football games at Alabama, also a little strange. So for me, figuring out how to live my own life, my own way, has never really been about many of those big aha moments, or at least not at the time. I don't realize they're aha moments. I think we do that until you look back. It's more like not the big fork in the road, but just those little tiny pivots that start to change your life. And one of those things happened to me. It was an aha moment. After I moved to Las Vegas, I went on a date with the man who's now my husband, who's sitting in the audience probably cringing. And being the romantic sort of folks that we were, or still are, I should say, on our first date, we wanted to get all the ugly stuff out of the way first. So we talked about religion and politics. Figured, why mess around if it's going to be a waste of time later on? And so we went on and had this conversation. When my husband asked me about my religious views, I said something out loud for the very first time. Something that I had known for a really long time. I said, I'm an atheist. I grew up in the South. A friend of mine recently said, Kim, you're like a Pegasus unicorn. How are you an atheist from the South? That's crazy. But I'd never actually said that out loud because I knew in the context of my life in the South, that wouldn't have been something that was acceptable to say. And so it was a little scary. And when I said it, I got something that I didn't expect. I got acceptance and understanding. And that was pretty awesome. And I got that for being who I really am. And that was amazing. So yes, he's my husband. We've been together for 18 years now. We have a son who's also in the audience cringing. This is actually my son the day he was born. This is the first time I ever laid eyes on him. And as you can imagine, that's a pretty big fork in the road when you have a child. And as a woman, we're faced with choices that men don't usually have to make. And so I decided, my husband and I decided together that I would stay home with my son. It was the best thing for us. I wouldn't trade one single second of the time that I spent with him as an infant for anything in the world. But I can tell you that what I did was I allowed myself to take on a lot of roles, or a lot of expectations that really weren't mine as a mother. I became the person who thought I had to be super mom. Yeah. I took my 3-month-old baby to kinder music, which was actually a great way to meet other moms who were also losing their minds. But we put on these elaborate play dates at my house where I was like cooking brunch and quiche and all these things, and people would get there, and all I could think was, God, I'm sweating. I'm dying here, people. Can we just have some wine? I know it's 11 in the morning, but jeez. I became the kind of person who made handmade birthday invitations for my son's first birthday party. And while those things, all of these things are great, I'm not judging anybody for doing them, but they weren't things that I wanted to do, really. They were things that I thought I needed to do. So by doing that, the happy birthday made me feel a little bit like this. And I started to wonder, isn't there something more? Is there a way that I can find, not balance, but if I can find a way to be a mom, be with my family, do the very best job I can, and also have something that stimulates my brain, my soul, my creativity? And so I began doing something I'd never done before. I began freelance writing. Sort of a fork in the road. And it opened up for me a whole world that I didn't know existed. It gave me an opportunity to connect with people that I would never have met. It gave me the freedom and the right to ask questions of strangers. You know, proper Southern lady doesn't do that. Now I do all the time, by the way. It was really empowering, it was really interesting, and it was really exciting. And over time, the publication I was working for, I began to work as an editor, and it was fantastic, except the magazine launched in like 2008, and we all know what happened with the economy around about that time. So the economics of a small publication are really stressful and really hard. You get into this headspace where you always think the sky is falling, and you're also chasing around a lot of creative people like me who have a very flexible and fluid relationship with time. So your deadline is set. You've got to have everything to the printer or it doesn't get printed. But they're, you know, whatever. I'll turn it in when I get ready. That's a little stressful, by the way. And so about a year ago, well, a year and a half ago now, I did something else that put me outside my comfort zone, just like when I began freelance writing. I stepped outside myself and I said, here's this job that I love. Here's a life I never imagined I could have. I quit. And that sounds pretty stupid, doesn't it? But it was actually one of the very best things I ever did. I admit wholeheartedly that I am one of the luckiest people in the world. And after I quit my job, I was assigned a story, a cover story for a local magazine about the man who's now my boss, Tony Hsieh. A few weeks later, I got an email from someone on his team who invited me to lunch. Would you be interested in contributing to this website we're thinking about doing? Sure I would. Hell yeah. So I sort of feel like I stumbled into this life that I now have, but I really didn't, because luck is not about just being lucky. Luck is about being brave enough to step outside your comfort zone. Luck is about being brave enough to think about your life in a way that you had never imagined it before. Luck is about when those crazy opportunities come along to say, yes, let me try. And I don't want to take credit for this. This is a quote actually from this author who came to visit us downtown in Las Vegas here, Lane Becker, who wrote a book called Get Lucky. And I think it's really fascinating that we think about luck in such this way that we don't have any control over it, but it's really in our hands. We make our luck. We have to be willing to take a chance. And so I did. And my life has changed completely. I am now working full-time with Downtown Project. I'm sure many of you in the room are familiar with that. I am a writer, which in no way encompasses anything close to all the things that I do. And that's also about being able to step outside your comfort zone. It's about not being defined even by your job title. Being willing to do weird stuff. I do weird stuff. I go and ride down the strip in a bus that's made like a school bus with a Volkswagen minivan in it. I have breakfast with the guy who created MacGyver. That's weird. But it's also really cool. And I get to meet amazing, smart people that I would never have had the opportunity to talk with. And I get to talk with them about my life. I had lunch with a girl who worked for the X Prize Foundation, creating a prize for education and literacy. And you know what we talked about? My kid and his schooling. That's crazy. I got to sit in an apartment in a high-rise building downtown and look out over empty lots, places where we can only imagine what's coming next for our city. And I got to do it with the Harvard economist, Ed Glazer, who wrote a book that inspired so much of the work that's happening downtown. That's awesome. That's weird. It's crazy. Another really cool thing that's happened because I was willing to step outside my comfort zone and let go of what other people expected of me, I've been able to find a tribe of people who are like me, who are also willing to try to carve out their own path, not just for themselves, but for their community. We as a city have an opportunity to reimagine who we are. We don't have to be the Las Vegas that everyone thinks of. We don't have to only be the Las Vegas that's associated with the Strip. We can be people who sit in a room on Saturday and talk about ideas. We can be people who care about one another. We can be people who are connected. And we can be connected by our passion, by our ideals, by the things that we believe in. And I never would have thought that was possible. And I think probably many of you sitting here in this room right now would probably have not thought that was possible. And so my clarion call, the thing that I want to make sure that when everyone leaves here today, that you all do, stop and think about how you're living your life. Are you living it according to your rules? Are you taking chances? Are you following some sort of pattern that's not what you really want? Because you can't really have balance. I think Alexia was 100% right there. But you can have the life that you want. You can have it all. You just have to decide what it all is for you. And so I ask you to go out into the world today and ask yourself, what can I do to change the course of my life? Where are those forks in the road? Where are those little pivots that I can take chances to change the path that I'm on? And how will that help me to be a better woman, a better husband, a better wife, and a better mom? Because I believe that by following our own path, we can all achieve that sense of satisfaction and happiness and be the best person that we can be for the people who love us. Thank you.